Hi there, this is Gisele Schierhorst. I'm head of the Music Library, and welcome again to Vinyl Notes. It's Black History Month, and in honor of that, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the very interesting and unique LPs that we have in the collection pertaining to African American history and the arts. This first one is called The Dialectics of Liberation. And this was a conference held in 1967 by the Institute of Phenomenological Studies in London. And the guest speaker was political activist Stokely Carmichael. He was just 24 years old at the time, and he attended Howard University, where he was a leader in the student government and chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So it was a very interesting lecture that he gave, very provocative. He assailed the imperialism of England and the United States, the barbaric acts of Western civilization, and provided many examples of the distortion of Western history. So again, this is an historic recording that I recommend, very powerful. This is an LP of the I Have a Dream speech given by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. At the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, which took place in 1963. And that was a very powerful speech. It was the last speech in a series given by many other including many other eminent leaders, including A. Philip Randolph, head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which was the first union led by African Americans, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, Bayard Rustin, the chief organizer of the march, Roy Wilkins, champion of civil rights and the executive secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, John Lewis, who was chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and several others. The goal of the March on Washington, of course, was jobs with decent pay and equal protection of the law and basic human rights when one came up against the law, desegregation of schools, and many other just basic civil, the right to vote peacefully, and many other basic human and civil rights. So again, this is another exciting event and wonderful recording. It's wonderful to have these types of primary sources, and these speeches were recorded live. This is the original address from the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963, and those involved in making these speeches and organizing these events and giving these lectures, I can only imagine were aware of their place in history and how future generations would want to know about the concerns and what they were fighting for and pressing for, and so we're very blessed, really, to have this information on recordings. And it's an emotional experience, really, to be able to sit down and at an LP player and just kind of insert yourself into that period of time when you're listening to it through headphones, and you really feel like you're part of it there, and all of the emotion is there, and it's really wonderful that we have these.
Manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination 100 years later. The Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity.
Poet, activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist Langston Hughes created this musical called Jericho Jim Crow with music arranged by Hugh Porter, and it was performed in New York City's Village Presbyterian Church and Brotherhood Synagogue to rave reviews by the New York Times in 1964. And it covers many milestones in African American history, and it incorporates spirituals and traditional songs, and it's quite thoughtfully put together, and I had never heard of it, but it's just a really lovely and energizing and emotional project. So I would recommend having a listen to this. Sweet Honey in the Rock is an a cappella women's vocal ensemble founded by Bernice Johnson Reagan in 1973. And this is a live performance recorded on November 7th, 1980 at the All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. And many of the songs that are composed and performed by Sweet Honey are about African American history and the experiences of women of all backgrounds, and the audience, you can tell they have a really devoted fan base, very responsive fans in the audience, and it's just a great concert. This album features Ruth Norman, whose dates are 1928 to 2007, and she was a gifted pianist dedicated to educating the public about the contributions of Black composers from the Renaissance through contemporary periods. And this album features some well-known composers such as William Grant Still, Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and Margaret Bonds, but then there are some lesser-known composers here as well: Ignatius Sancho, Francis Johnson, James Hemingway, and Wynne Boyd. So the compositions vary from very easy and childlike pieces that a pianist with not a lot of experience can play, to real show pieces, the showcasing virtuosity. So that makes it also a very enjoyable album to listen to. This album is entitled Black Music, The Written Tradition, and it's performed by the Black Music Repertory Ensemble, which comes out of the Columbia College Center for Black Music Research. And the BMRE's purpose is to promote appreciation for the Black musical heritage through the performance and recording of small ensemble literature written by Black composers from 1800 to the present day. Another wonderful live performance recorded on October 13th, 1989 at the Sheldon Concert Hall in St. Louis, Missouri. And there are some of the composers featured are Will Marion Cook, Noble Sissel, and James Reese Europe. So there's some great singing on this recording. Silhouettes in Courage is a 4-volume set, and it presents a detailed, dramatic history of the Black American experience on record. The project received high praise when it was first released in 1970, and over 500 actors and musicians narrated and reenacted events in Black history from the earliest cultures and civilizations in Africa to the late 60s. This is a fascinating series, and a lot of research went into it, and you can really feel and sense the emotion behind the description and narration of events that take place in this series. So it would be appropriate to use it for any educational curriculum in history, and it's just a wonderful effort, and it's highly recommended. This album is called Stars of the Apollo Theater, and it talks about this compelling history of this theater, which is still located at 125th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues in Harlem. Many African-American artists got their start there, and this album is a compilation of early recordings by some of the artists who began their careers at the Apollo, and I'll name just a few: the Mills Brothers, Ella Fitzgerald, Cab Calloway, Bessie Smith, and that's Butterbeans and Susie, a comedic duo. So there are funny songs on here, and thoughtful songs, and great jazz, R&B, and it's just a wonderful representation of the history of the Apollo. Finally, we have the story of jazz for children, with information and recordings from the Folkways collection. It's narrated by Langston Hughes, and it's meant for children, but it proves to be just as entertaining and informative for adults. It starts with the African origins of music and continues with the development of jazz, the blues, and ragtime in the southern United States. Many artists are represented here, and it's just a wonderful, concise kind of treatment of how jazz came into being, and it's got some lovely photos, I believe, as well. Some photos of some accomplished artists in the field: Mary Lou Williams, Lead Belly, and the Eureka Jazz Band from New Orleans. And this is a photo of Langston Hughes. So that's another wonderful recording. And we have more here at the Music Library, so please get in touch with us if you're interested in coming in and enjoying some of our great recordings in celebration of Black History Month. If you're interested in listening to one of the LPs that we've talked about, or any audio item from the collection, just come to the front desk of the Music Library and we'll help you search for the accession number in the catalog, and we'll charge the LP out to you to use here in the library, along with headphones and a key to the LP cabinet, and we'll get you started. All right, to get started at the LP player, a staff member will help you. We're going to bring the key to unlock the cover, and we're going to lift the lid up and take the LP out of the sleeves. And place it on the LP player. There's an on-off switch. You're going to turn to the right, a red light will come on, and then you're going to press start in just a second, but you want to make sure your headphones are plugged in to the first output jack, and that the dial is turned to 4 for turntable, and put your headphones on. You're going to make sure that this latch is pushed to the right above the arm, and just very carefully press the start stop button, and then lift the arm and place it down on the LP. You can use this lever to bring it down. And there you are. You should hear something.